Yep. Yeah, and we're live now.
Uh,
Welcome to another Nacho Tuesday, everybody. Today we have a special event. It's called PowerMoves, and today we're going to talk about mastering U.S. market expansion for Israeli and American startups. And without further ado, we'd love if we could introduce our guests to you. We have Guy here, Milhalter, with Pearl Cohen. We have Shira Goldetsky, who is the CEO of Sapient Search. We have Roy Ionas, founder and CEO, U.S. market expansion and founder and CEO at Leadspotting. And we have Donna Griffit, corporate storyteller and pitch alchemist for startups. Guy, we'd love if you can introduce yourself and what you guys do over there at Pearl Cohen.
Yeah, sure. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Andy, for moderating and for organizing. And nice to see everyone on the panel. My name is Guy. I'm a partner at the law firm of Pearl Cohen. Pearl Cohen is a Israeli-American law firm. We've got offices in Tel Aviv and offices in the U.S., in New York, in Boston, and L.A. And I personally am a corporate and commercial lawyer, and I advise startups and technology companies on anything related to their corporate and commercial matters, mostly for companies as they expand their operations in the United States. We also do a lot of IP work and patent work.
Excellent. Shira?
Yeah, so I'm Shira. I have a boutique recruitment firm called Sapient Search, and we specialize in working with both U.S. companies and foreign startups, and especially Israeli companies entering and scaling in the U.S. We place leadership, technical, non-technical roles, and work on both key hires and building out entire teams. So we basically work with startups as their head of talent and help them scale over time, and enjoy going through these journeys with companies from all over the world.
Great. Roy?
So hi everybody. Thank you, Andy, for this great opportunity. My name is Roy, but you can call me Roy. Roy has a sound in Hebrew, it doesn't exist in English. I like the other amazing panel here. I'm running my own company called Leadspotting. Leadspotting is a company specializing in collecting data from open sources and transforming that into sales and marketing. And on top of our AI technology, we have developed multiple tools for optimizing the outreach of our clients. So basically, we provide platforms and services that help clients scale up and their outreach purposes, finding new clients. And today we're going to talk about how you can scale that, how you can use that technology from the tech aspect of expanding your sales in the US.
Excellent. And go ahead, Donna.
Hi, morning from California. I'm still on my first coffee. I'm Donna Griffit. I've been a corporate storyteller for the past 20 years, which basically means I've traveled the globe and helped people not be boring, creating captivating messages from all the bits and bytes and data, so people understand what it is that you do, why it matters, why they should invest in you, why they should buy from you. And I also am the translator of Geek Speak, especially when it comes to translating Israeli startups into Americanese. And that's not a language thing necessarily. It's a culture thing and a messaging thing. And I'm happy to get into that more as we go.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us so early there. I was up early as well this morning. The UN General Assembly is taking place nearby, so it was just sirens all morning. So
different kind of sirens than in Israel right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what's the most important consideration for any Israeli startup looking to break into the U.S. market, and how about vice versa? This one's an open question if anybody wants to tackle it.
I'd say as far as companies trying to break into the US market, have a really great product that you feel really confident about. And if needed, be willing to reevaluate your offering and align your product to the local market as you learn more. I think also just this very simple advice of be a professional. And what I mean by that is really think about doing things the right way from the beginning and don't cut corners in a way that may cause pain down the line. If you're not an expert in something, find an expert to partner with. And then, of course, find the right team to execute on your company's mission. If you're not sure how to do it, there are some recruitment partners out there.
Excellent. And Donna, the art of storytelling is key for any company, right? Especially for technical founders. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that, I'm about to introduce myself to my MBA students at Stanford GSB today. And my hidden and not so hidden agenda is going to be making them realize that they have this powerful tool in their toolkit already. Storytelling, whatever country you're in, whatever religion, ethnicity, group you belong to, we all tell stories. And it's about creating connections, building trust. And this is something that can really cross over the chasms of different cultures. And it's not just standing there telling a joke. There's a real structure and a real science to storytelling that if you structure your messages in the right way and you blend in stories, anecdotes, metaphors, and turn it into a conversation, it will change the dynamic of your communication just from end to end. And it's super important when we're bridging cultures.
Excellent. And Roy, what are your thoughts on breaking into the U.S. market from a sales aspect in terms of, getting in front of prospective clients and connecting with them?
Yeah, looking from the eyes of an Israeli startup or an Israeli company, Israel is a nice market, growing, very tech, very attractive, very intimate, because, when you're driving Tel Aviv in 10 minutes, you can cover a lot of very important prospects you want in a 2-3 miles circle. Now, but US is the big thing. When you talk about US, by the way, if you look at our database, you see that something like 1/4 to maybe half of the world market is based in the US. It depends on the sector itself. For example, if I'm a healthcare company, half of the world's healthcare budget on the US. So definitely that's the place we want to be. That's the place you need to expand. But on the other hand, there's another consideration you need to do. As Donna mentioned, the mentality is a bit different. The business culture is different. And what you really want to do is you want to reach, there's a much bigger scale of, let's call it enterprise grade clients in the US than we have in Israel. And that's where you want to be. So we have many considerations from culture-wise, from messenger-wise, and also from budget-wise. Marketing in the US is a lot more costly, much more expensive than marketing in Israel, either from salaries or media budget. And there's a lot of considerations you need to do on how to plan it properly and how to penetrate and create a brand. And we're going to talk about later on with some tips and some consideration, but one of the things you need to think is appropriate penetration strategy. How to find a nice, let's call it blue zone in the US to create a brand experience, and then from there to jump to the second level of tier 1 clients.
Roy, if I can just add to your very important point, I also think one thing that maybe is a little more difficult for someone coming from Israel, which is such a tiny country, to wrap their head around, is the regional differences and the cultural differences within the United States. Because what we see often, at least from my vantage point in New York, and this is, by the way, true for Americans as well, New Yorkers trying to go do business with someone in California or in the South, and they approach it from their New York business perspective, and it completely falls flat in, say, Texas. And so it's even doubly important for Israeli startups to really understand the cultural differences, the business cultures of the different regions within the United States, and then going even deeper to understand the differences between the different industries. So whether your startup is in agriculture, ag tech, or med tech, or automotive, they're all very different and they all speak different languages. And the earlier you understand those cultural differences, the better. And I'm seeing it even just from the lawyer's perspective. So I can only imagine what you see it from your sales and storytelling perspectives.
I think I'll totally agree with that. I grew up on the East Coast, and then Israel, and then back to New York, and then Israel, and then West Coast. So I've kind of tasted all of it. And even as an American, moving to California and suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, when somebody says amazing, great, fantastic, terrific, awesome, we're totally going to do this. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that the money is in the bank. And that does not mean that you're going to hear from them ever again. They want to leave that opening of, okay, I really do think it's awesome in the moment, but there's a lot of awesomeness out there. I don't want to say no so that eventually I could say yes. And you want to keep that door open, and you want to be smart with that. You don't want to go, they get back to you, you put them on your update list, and they get back to you 3 months later saying, hey, sounds like y'all are doing great. Let's talk. And you're like, oh, now we talk. No, don't do that. Don't be Israeli and stubborn about it. Like, you have to play the game. You have to understand that you're playing chess. This is a long haul, and plan out your strategy.
That's a great point. Yeah, coming from the West Coast myself, now living on the East Coast, the West Coast, they say tends to be more laid back. So yeah, people like to kind of keep the doors open, and when they're ready, they'll move. But East Coast people are a little bit more direct. So yes means yes, no means no. But yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, it is the United States of America. So a lot of the different states kind of act like their own country in a way and have their own kind of cultural norms, if that makes sense. So all important considerations when breaking into the U.S. market. I guess, is there any other considerations, Guy, when you're setting up an entity for the first time in the U.S. from a legal standpoint?
Yeah, so there's really an assortment of issues, that one really has to take into account when forming a company in the U.S. One of the trends that we are seeing now, and particularly true in the last year, or really in the last 2 years, since as the situation in Israel, both pre-war and since the war has materialized, we're seeing more and more companies looking to, or founders who are looking to form a company, starting their company, like the parent company in the U.S. One of the first decisions that a company has to make is where to incorporate. And there, if you ask 10 attorneys, you'll probably get 15 different opinions. But overall, still the biggest kind of trend that we see with respect to what investors prefer is to incorporate the company in the state of Delaware, which has a very well-developed set of corporate laws and court decisions. In the last few years, other states are trying to start to compete with that. We see Texas, we see Nevada, but overall, Delaware is still the go-to place. Other considerations that are really important is everything related to employment law is something to be taken extremely seriously. What a lot of Israeli companies are often surprised by is how different employment matters are in the United States as opposed to Israel. And we see, at our firm with our clients, issues with relation to how to handle the hiring and firing of employees come up over and over again. So this is definitely something to, to keep in mind as you expand to the U.S. Other issues, I just want to kind of put like a reminder of a new requirement in the U.S., which really just started this year, which a lot of companies now need to pay attention to, and that is a new filing requirement called the Beneficial Ownership Information Report filing requirement, which is a requirement under a new law called the Corporate Transparency Act. And that's another thing that companies need to take into account is they now have to make a filing with the U.S. federal government to list who the beneficial owners of the company are. This is essentially requires them to, state who the owners of the company are. This is maybe familiar to Israeli companies filing in Israel, but it's a fairly new concept in the U.S. So just something to keep in mind. The list goes on and on, but want to yield the floor to other perhaps more interesting topics.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, the difference between, I would say New York and California tend to be very employee friendly from a corporate structure. If you set up shop there to operate out of those areas, as opposed to maybe Texas. But one of the reasons why people go to New York or California is because there's a great talent pool, right? So a lot of the success of a company really depends on being around where all the talent and really the community really is, depending on your industry. So for instance, in technology, which is, my particular industry, a lot of people might be in, they might be in San Francisco, that sort of thing. So Shira, I'd love to get your feedback on this. We know building a great team is the key to success. So when companies decide to finally hire in the U.S., I'm sure there could be a lot of anxiety around hiring the right person, especially the early team, which matters so much for the growth of a company. I guess, what are some important aspects that every Israeli company should consider when trying to find and hire the right U.S. talent to build their company?
Great question. Thanks, Andy. So yeah, this is an exciting, but also can be a scary moment in the life of a company, having the opportunity to build out team in the U.S. And if they've just gotten that seed stage or Series A funding, they kind of have the opportunity to do it right the first time, and they don't want to waste those 6 months with the wrong hires and waste time and money. So I think there's a lot of things to think about to sort of de-risk that entire process. The way that we approach hiring with our clients from the beginning is we're less initially concerned with the role's title. We like to really dig into and focus in on what is the biggest business problem the company is trying to solve, and work together with all the stakeholders and leadership and understand what that is, and use that as a starting point to create a really accurate and thorough perspective on what the role is, and then helping the company create a solid job description. I think also just long-term thinking is really important at this stage. This person is coming in to solve a problem now, but how are they going to be supportive for the company's objectives in 6 months or in 1 or 2 years? And does that align with what the candidate wants? And so I think really getting all those variables aligned for success from the very beginning to make sure you're making the right hire and that person is joining the right company is setting up the process for success. And then as we start, engaging with candidates out there in the talent marketplace and submitting candidates to our client, we work really hard to run a thorough process so the company can get to know the candidate in great depth and vice versa, via in-depth skill assessment, take-home and live challenge, behavioral questions with leadership, deep reference checks. So all these things can give a company confidence that they're making the right choice and the right hire.
That's great. And do you see a persona difference maybe in what might make for a great early employee as opposed to one that might be better for a later stage company that's coming into the market?
Yeah, certainly. A lot of the companies we work with coming from Israel are certainly earlier stage. So I think adaptability, flexibility. So that company who's coming in as one of 10 people total in a company needs to be able to pivot and do all kinds of things and wear many hats. Whereas, if they're bigger or they've been around longer, they might be hiring for like a very specialized skill set, and that adaptability is a little bit less important at that stage.
Yep.
Andy, can I jump in with a question for Shira real quick? So on the hiring side and on the executive search side, are you seeing situations where you have to remind your Israeli clients some of the do's and don'ts as far as what you can and cannot ask in the United States? Because I know that the type of questions that might be appropriate when you are interviewing candidates or searching for candidates in Israel might not necessarily be either legal or proper in the United States.
100%. Yeah, there's 2 things that immediately come to mind that I've had come up. And so now I try to preemptively remind, especially perhaps newer or younger CEOs about some of these legalities and just cultural norms. So for example, in interviewing in Israel, it's very normal and standard to really get to know each other as people and even ask about like age, birthday, marital status. And these are just not things that are normal or even legal to ask about in the US. So I think having consciousness around that is helpful. Yeah.
That's an interesting difference. I didn't know about that one.
No, you can't ask in the US if someone is a reserve duty anymore.
A few years ago, many years ago, I was working with an organization in Israel and created working with Americans as Israelis and vice versa, that they were giving to both sides because they had massive teams. This was a big company. It was acquired by Cisco. And they did a poll to ask people, what are like your biggest gripes with communication, for the US with Israel and vice versa. And one of the answers that came up was, it's not appropriate to ask if I'm still breastfeeding. Now, I was like, well, and then I thought, okay, probably someone came back from maternity leave and it was like the most natural thing, like you're back at work now, how are you managing? Which to us in Israel, it's just a very polite inquiry. And in the US might be like, oh my God, you did not just ask that. So it's putting like a little safeguard, almost like, remember Clippy on Microsoft that would come up with the little tips, and just like thinking for a second before you do address anything that's too personal. I'd say sports is usually a pretty good equalizer, and the weather. That's why people stick to it. And especially in the times we're in with politics, you cannot take for granted that anyone is okay with your side, the other side. It's super important. I don't make it an issue. I mean, usually I have a little hostage necklace when I go into Stanford, when I'm working with clients that are not Israeli. I just don't have it on not because I'm not with the situation. You don't want that to be an issue to doing business with them, and it will be.
Yep, as I always say,
And
keep the.
Can I ask a question for Shira here on that part? Just one small question. So, well, when you build your strategy to go into US, basically you're building a sales strategy more than because usually Israeli companies, they have their R&D inside in Israel, and then they want to build their sales operation. Now, when we look about trends today in the world, the world becomes digital, and as it becomes digital, your sales operation becomes digital. It's less face-to-face meetings, it's less exhibition, it's a lot more SDR, sales development representative operation. And one of the things I tried in the past was building, let's call it a lower cost SDR operation in East Europe and try to penetrate US clients with that. And I saw there is a gap. There is a gap that also not only Israelis, but also salespeople from East Europe find it hard to approach correctly, let's call it tier 1 or tier 2 American clients. So when you look at this strategy, when do you think you need to hire a Native American, born or cultural acquainted salesperson, and when can you hire some offshore still to be effective on the US market?
Great question. So a lot of the companies that we work with, it's pretty common that, the Israeli CEO has been kind of on the line, coming back and forth, doing founder-led sales. They have some clients, some revenue in the US, and then they really need to have that boots on the ground person who is already living and working and breathing, US business culture. Ideally is with a company that is maybe like very similar to their vertical and maybe like 3 or 6 years beyond, so they can get kind of all that information and intel. A lot of companies have tried quite a bit of outsourcing by the time they get to us, and it's not worked out well for them. For certain role types, it can work out great, technical roles. I've not seen it work out well many times for sales because of exactly what you're saying. And so oftentimes by the time a company gets to us, they really want to build the DNA of their company in the US. People boots on the ground that. So I can say worked with a lot of like outsourced sales teams by the time they start working with us, but perhaps it's successful for some companies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and every industry kind of has its own community, and the people that have experience in that community. Like I'm originally from Seattle, and I always call it like a Microsoft and Amazon town, right? There's even a culture within those companies. So to be successful working with, say, if you want to get Microsoft or some of these enterprise clients as a customer, a lot of them have like their own nuances with their cultural identity, as part of their community, right? So. When I'm in Seattle, it just, you run into an Amazon person or a Microsoft person, there's like a very distinct, personality traits of those people. And if you better understand that, especially from a sales standpoint, you'll be able to more easily connect with those types of audiences. But you really have to be on the ground and, be face to face with the community and those people to really see the differences. And the same goes for startups, right? If you're looking to target other startups in the US, there's a whole culture around San Francisco and even New York around the whole startup scene where, if you understand it, because you're on the ground there, you'll be able to better connect with people and actually sell your product more than some random cold email lining up on the box.
Andy, if I can just add to this point, from what I see, because I work quite closely with a lot of clients on the legal side, where I advise the sales teams and the sales leadership teams in working closely with the CFO, which is oftentimes still located in Israel, where the management is in Israel. And, in addition to issues around, what is the sales team or the sales leader that you bring, how they interface with potential and prospective customers, it's also an intra-company issue. And this is obviously more of an issue for more mature companies that have larger teams. But even the internal communications between, say, the management and the CFO side of things in Israel and the sales and marketing team in Israel can be you know, an issue that needs to be addressed, because the you know, if there's a disconnect between the teams, it's just not going to work well. And there really needs to be really strong communications, really strong understanding of, you know, both the cultural things, and this is before we even get to talking about the time zone issues, where is a lot of the people in the audience who are based in Israel and work with the US knows, you know, Fridays can be very tough. Sundays can be very tough for us working with Israeli clients on the US side. So it's just a constant thing that you need to make sure that the US teams and the Israeli teams are managed properly and communicate properly.
Yeah, that's a great point. But yeah, if you could do it right, I mean, you could get this almost a 24-hour work cycle going. You could have management running over there in Israel. Then you could have your sales teams, you know, working away during the US hours. But yeah, communication and structure is going to be key for that to be successful. Anything else that, you know, Shira or anybody else here that would recommend for how to set up and manage a team in the US successfully?
I think in-person meets are just, you know, super important. So it's pretty common that as a company is building out an office, maybe they have 5 to 10 people. Israeli leadership is coming over very regularly. They're traveling to conferences together, client events together. So there's often ample opportunity to form those relationships. And I think that's very important for any remote team, and especially having remote teams internationally.
Great. Any other unique challenges that a foreign company should be aware of before breaking into the US?
I think from the hiring perspective, I think certainly lack of brand recognition can be challenging. So when we're reaching out to candidates, these are very startup savvy candidates. A lot of companies that they want to join, they already know of that company's name. So when it's a small Israeli startup that maybe has 15 people, this can be more challenging. And I think things that a company can do to work with that challenge are create a really compelling, attractive online presence for your company, your LinkedIn, have visibility, what your company is doing, case studies. The more information, you know, you can share, the better. Both online and in those conversations when you start engaging with candidates, really understand the best way to articulate your unique value proposition and how you differentiate in your niche. So again, this is a difference between getting very average candidates on board or those candidates that are really with the most interesting companies that are hard for us to get on the phone, let alone get on the phone with our client. So I think awareness around those topics is valuable. I think on the candidate side, in general, not only for Israeli companies, but I just think that there's anxiety around joining a company that's at an early stage. And then especially that doesn't even have leadership in the US, where you're working very much on your own. So I think, again, you have to really be able to answer, why would a candidate want to join your company and why now? And really to gain clarity on the best parts of what you have to offer. Maybe you can't offer a salary that's going to be as high as Amazon, but maybe there's something else you can offer. Growth opportunity, really compelling equity, being that founding, you know, product manager, etc. So what can you offer, you know, beyond that cash comp that's compelling, while of course, hopefully still having cash compensation that's attractive to a US candidate.
That's a great point. So I guess storytelling might be an aspect of that as well too, right? As a Israeli founder, how do you, and I guess Donna, this might be more for you, how do you get people really excited about joining your company, and how do you really share your vision in a meaningful way that will attract people to want to work with your company?
First of all, it's having a vision.
Yep.
And that might sound trivial, but when I walk into a workshop for founders and I say, how many of you have a vision statement? Out of, let's say, 30, maybe 5 at most raise their hand. And then I say, okay, how many of you have a vision statement that you're happy with? And then, like, even of those 5 hands, 3 will go down. In Israel, it's very much accepted to run and then figure things out along the way, which is really what makes them excellent at solving problems, at being agile, at getting things done really fast. Things in America, North America, work differently. It's a lot about sitting and pondering, and it's very frustrating oftentimes for Israeli companies to kind of encounter that different pace. And I think that both sides could take a page from each other's playbook. But first of all, define what your vision is, and it's not what you're doing now. ask yourself if 5 years from now, you are being acquired or IPOing and they're writing about you in TechCrunch. What are they saying? What kind of company? What did you do? So it's not necessarily your product now or even your product 3, 6, 1 year down the line. It's where you're heading with this. Get people to believe your big vision. Get people to join that get excited about it. So, I mean, for example, I work with an incredible client who has created a community and a supplement to help people with diabetes, with type 2 diabetes, manage their diabetes. And I worked with them on 2 rounds. They raised a lot of funding, and then he asked me to work with his sales team. And he had gone into it because his father had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in his 50s, and he saw his father simply fading away. And they send me the sales deck, and the story of him and his father was gone. I'm like, guys, where's the story? And they're like, oh, we're meeting Whole Foods and CVS and Walgreens. We don't have time to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, yes, you do. Because that's probably the most important thing that they're going to remember. And then it turns out that both the VP sales and the US director of sales had fathers who were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in their 50s. I'm like, do you realize what a gold mine you're sitting on, so to speak? Let's wish our parents good luck. But this is something that's memorable. This is something that people are like, this is the company that half the C-suite joined the company because they are personally connected to the vision. They were personally affected by it. So if you want to get people to join your vision, you be clear on your vision and how committed you are.
Yeah, because a lot of people want to be a part of something with purpose, right? And if they could really, connect with that vision and that mission and really believe in it, the work will kind of speak for itself, right? People are going to be naturally motivated to, accomplish the end goal, that vision that you're all trying to accomplish. And from a corporate storytelling standpoint, you bring up a great point. Especially now these days with a lot of Me Too products out there, it's easier than ever, especially in the software space, to launch new software at a really affordable and quick pace. But the storytelling aspect is what really makes you stand out, right? So, kind of living on that edge there to have like a great story will really help you stand out from all the other products out there in the marketplace. And to your point, that diabetes story is great. It's not going to hurt or detract from a potential client, but for people that actually, there's some people out there that might actually really be attracted to that story and actually might get them over the finish line, right? But anybody else, it's not really a detractor, but they'll see it as a differentiator. Remember your brand.
Remember it. They're not going to remember your cost of manufacturing. They're not going to remember your CAC. They're not going to remember your LTV. They're not going to remember your growth or your, those things. They're going to remember the stories and the moments that you give them about how your company has impacted the market and hopefully the world.
Yep. Yeah, because a lot of people get caught up in like trying to sell their features of their product, right? So, a lot of these products all have the same features. So it's like, okay, me too. But your purpose and that mission is, what's really going to help build a community around your business and product and get people excited to do business with you.
So just to piggyback on what you said, so yeah, some features are very similar. If you turn your demo into a user journey, a user story, and actually show what a client or a customer is going through as they use it, the simplicity of it, the wow of it, the results of it, their love. That's another great storytelling piece, collect testimonials. In the US, especially, the first place they're going to go is your LinkedIn. And I think Shira mentioned it before, getting your LinkedIn straight. They're going to look you up. They're going to look your reps up. You want to make sure that there's a cohesive story there behind it. Also, the value that you bring, it's not a laundry list of your CV. It's so much more than that. So it's finding those touch points that people can truly relate to. And that makes you stand out as well and builds the trust. And in the US, one of the biggest values you're going to find is, do I trust this person? Do I trust this company?
Yeah, and if you see other people, if you see them doing, servicing or doing business with people that are like you and they've gotten results for those people, you're much more likely to believe that they can do the same for you, right?
Yeah. And by the way, so for example, I have over 400 recommendations on my LinkedIn. They didn't get there just because people were happy with my services. Obviously they were, but if somebody emails me, this was amazing, thank you so much, I'd be like, would you mind turning that into a LinkedIn testimonial? Don't be afraid to ask for people's stamp of approval. Worst comes to worst, they'll have to go through legal, and either they will be able to or not, and then you can anonymize it. Best case, you have a champion lined up, because if you're closing $1 million annual contract, they're gonna want to talk to your other clients to see what that's about. So you're already priming yourself. The same thing for investors. Investors are going to want to talk to happy clients. So all of these things are important ducks to have in a row for yourself.
Yep. And from a sales aspect too, right? Like LinkedIn could be really powerful because, a lot of people will trust doing business with you if you work with somebody that they know as well. So, leverage LinkedIn for those referrals as well too, right? So if you see somebody in their network that, well, and they know well, as well, getting that introduction is going to be very powerful, especially in B2B sales, to be able to actually get, at least get a meeting with somebody to pitch your idea to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a golden tool. And I don't think that Israeli companies especially are leveraging it enough. LinkedIn is really so much more valuable than any other quote unquote social media, because this is business media. This is business communications. It's right out there. It's transparent. If somebody has recommended you and they're connected, you can't fake that, because anyone could go and ask them about it. So it's trust par excellence.
Yeah, transparency is key to everything. So I guess any other storytelling tips? I mean, transparency is one of the hallmarks of that. Getting the vision in place. Any other key points that you would recommend for?
Simplicity. What you have to understand is that likely in the first meeting you're having, you're not talking to very technically oriented people. You're either talking to the CEO or the CMO or whoever, or the IT or whoever's buying it. And yeah, the IT, it starts to get into the nitty gritty. So the first meeting is kind of like a first date. If on your first date you start talking about all of your past dates and where you'd like to get married and how many kids you want to have, there's a good chance you're not going to have a second date with this person, just saying. Same thing in an initial meeting. You don't want to overload them with details and facts and tech and numbers and Excels. People are in love with their Excels. Excels are great not to show. You need to kind of pull the essence of it. So on my website, I have a template for the optimal sales deck. I'm happy to put it in the chat here. So it's a very simple flow of getting into their head, getting into their heart, and getting into their gut. It's a 3-point split. You're not just talking data. People don't make decisions just from here. They think they do, but it's from the heart and the gut as well. And it's that extra little something that they see in you that they'll hope for themselves. It's like the I'll have what she's having moment.
Yep.
That's what you want to instill. And storytelling will help you do that, because you're going to have all these examples and you're going to have all these things. But most important, you're going to show that you understand them, their need, their want, their pain. You get it, and you are simply there to make it better.
Yeah, more of like a concept approach. Oh, go ahead, Roy.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Donna, amazing tips. Okay, I promise you that tonight I'm going to do 2 things. First of all, I'm going to email you a request to put a recommendation on my LinkedIn. Okay, that's for sure. And second, I'm going to throw away my presentation tonight. I'm going to rewrite it, okay, as a story, another presentation, okay? So thanks for the tips. Amazing. Sorry, guys.
Yep.
I was actually going to kind of say something similar from a different perspective, that, what you were saying really resonated, because just earlier this morning, I was talking to a partner of mine at the firm who does a ton of financing rounds, for startup companies, anything from seed round to later stages. We were talking about kind of the type of things that we see, with our Israeli clients as they discuss with U.S. investors. And one of the things that he said, and I agreed, and I think it goes along the lines of what you were saying, is, one is, transparent, be an open book, be transparent. I mean, that's obviously extremely important on the legal side, but just in general, when you talk to investors, if you kind of act like you're sort of withholding something, that creates suspicion and it doesn't work. And one of the kind of the best tips is listen more and talk less. It is so important.
And it's so hard. As Israelis,
it's very hard to do. Very hard to do.
And I can say that, by the way, if you want, I could talk like this and sound Israeli, because I live how enough feels. And I was made fun of enough as an American when I first moved there when I was 11 that I can give it back and now kind of be at this perspective of the hybrid. And you're right. We don't listen enough.
Yeah, Americans talk too much sometimes. Yeah, there's a saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right?
One of those annoying little things you grow
Great
up
saying.
with. Seen and not heard. And yeah. But if you are going to open your mouth, you want it still to be about them. By highlighting them and making them feel that they're in the center, you are doing well for yourself. I mean, Dale Carnegie in How to Influence Friends and Influence People said that he'd make a habit of going around and like talking to people at parties, and talking was listening. And at the end, like someone said to him, "You're such a great conversationalist." And he hadn't opened his mouth once. People,
Yeah, it's like keeping them to keep the conversation going, right? Asking the right questions, kind of reiterating their story that they've been telling you to show that you've been listening, and kind of let them, encourage them to even talk more about themselves, which is
yes,
great.
and bring up those points and say, so what I hear you saying, can you say more about that? You're picking up the little, it's like hints, it's little Easter eggs.
Yep, and especially from a sales standpoint too, that really helps you identify the problems that they're actually having. And maybe they don't even realize they have a problem, but they, once it comes out in the story, they'll realize that they actually have a problem because they said it. So that, becomes a great opportunity to find alignment, maybe potentially from a business opportunity standpoint. I guess, Roy, any other tips that you would have from a sales aspect, getting some initial traction in the US, connecting with those first initial clients and developing some good business with them?
Yeah, definitely. I want to focus on 3 specific tips. Okay. The first tip is choose your area of focus. Okay. For example, the US is so big, and we've spoken about it before, about the diversity between different states. Now, sometimes if you do a deep good research, you may want to start with a state or with an area which is growing, but not necessarily crowded as the big tech hubs like New York or California. Okay, for example, I mentioned Texas is a very growing tech hub these days. There's also other areas in the US. So if this is at the beginning, when you want to create your brand, when you want to create some experience, when you want to create those recommendations, those critical initial new deals in the US, you may want to start not necessarily on the most competitive environment. Second, you got to think from day one on shortcuts and partnerships. Shortcuts can be, for example, for brand awareness, platforms like NachoNacho and others. If you're selling SaaS, there's many aggregators, many marketplaces that you can create significant awareness, and you can share, let's call it the awareness budget with the platforms themselves, and you can get on almost day one a big list of subscribers and of course small clients. And another big opportunity is also partnerships. You got to find those ideal partner profiles in the US that can help you reach your clients. Okay, so do a research, understand who are your ideal partners. An ideal partner can be a company that it's natural for them to sell their business, it's profitable for them, they got a big incentive in selling their business, and they got also direct contact with the exact decision maker you want in the organization itself. So find those partners that can leverage your business significantly. And I think the biggest tip, it doesn't relate to the US, it relates to the entire world. We're talking about sales, we're talking about 2024, AI. AI is the big game these days, okay? You got to use AI in building your list. You got to use AI to building your messages. You got to use AI in your outreaches, in your time performance, okay? I think that ChatGPT, if I had an employee contract that Shira would write for me for ChatGPT, probably like 70% of the company these days. Yep. AI is the big thing, and we got to use AI in everything you do, especially also in our sales growth in the US in general. By the way, this webinar is not only for Israeli companies, but also for US startups that are trying to expand from their small bubble to the big game. And I think these tips are relevant for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up there.
Roy, I just want to add to your point on the importance of the partnerships and the shortcuts. I 100% agree and see it, with a lot of our clients who are really able to, take off, their business can take off through those partnerships. Just a little word of caution from, coming from the lawyer in the group. those partnership agreements and the design partner agreements, reseller agreements, they can be fairly complex. I mean, they can look very simple, but they can have such important commercial, terms in it that really require paying a lot of attention to them. So, sometimes you could find yourself talking to a very large American company that just gives you its standard, partnership contract, and they will lead you to believe that this is their standard contract and just sign it and let's run with the partnership. You can pay the price for, not carefully entering into a contract on the back end. So always very important to negotiate those things, or at least to know what you're getting yourself into with open eyes and clear understanding of what is the actual nature of the partnership. And that also means, finding ways to protect your IP and making sure that you are not sharing things about your company IP that you should not be sharing necessarily with a partner. So just things to keep in mind.
Another one is like exclusivity agreements, things like that
Yes.
too. Got to make sure you don't get pigeonholed into one customer that might not perform for you.
Absolutely.
And Guy, we had a couple questions, I believe, too. Do you want to address any of those from the audience?
Yes. So there are actually, I noticed a couple of questions that had to do more with a more specific area of government contracting, issues around, someone being on the GSA schedule, as well as being, issues around foreign ownership, control, and influence. Those are very, very specific areas. The whole area of government contracting, as the people in the audience who deal with government contracting know, is tremendously complex. So it's probably a little bit beyond the scope of a more general discussion, but I'm happy to take some of these offline and see if we can assist, or if I can refer. There are certain things that come our way where our clients come to us with issues that are very government specific, like selling to the defense establishment, the Department of Defense, and there are law firms in Washington D.C. who that's all they do day in and day out, and oftentimes we find ourselves referring it to real specialists in the field. So if anybody has kind of more specific questions around government, selling to the U.S. government, can either discuss offline, or I can make referrals to specialists in the field that we work fairly close with.
Now, that's another great point you brought up there about transparency, right? So just you gave them a real good, honest answer there to help support the customer there potentially. Right. That's another big aspect of American culture too, right? You could build a network of people, even competitors, that you could refer business to. Mm-hmm. If a customer's not a good fit for you, you don't have to be enemies with your competitors. A lot of times they'll, if you have your particular niche, and as do they, if you have those kind of established relationships, you'll find each other referring business back and forth that are better fits for each other. So that's another good hack right there too, building a community with friendly companies, but also people that you might consider competitors that could also be friendly in some way, and eventually even lead to some sort of an acquisition in the future too. So don't shut your doors on people there. So I guess another big topic too is a lot of people want to seek U.S. capital. Guy, do you have any recommendations on Israeli companies that want to get into the U.S. to be able to raise capital from U.S. markets?
Yeah, so this actually goes back to some of the things that Donna was talking about earlier in the context of maybe sales. It's all completely applicable to dealing with investors. So this is all kind of like the cultural communication side of things, which is very, very important. On the more legal side, what we see is, and I think we touched on it earlier in the discussion, is that nowadays a lot of U.S. investors really want to see their investment being made in a U.S. company. And so, and it's always like a chicken and the egg thing, because you don't necessarily want to invest a ton of time and effort and money in setting your entire structure up front, to prepare you for that raise. But at the same time, if you don't have those structures, in place, it's going to be very much more challenging for you to to be able to close a financing round fairly smoothly and easily. Of course, this financing rounds at the earlier stages when perhaps you're going to raise just through a simple safe is going to be much easier. But as you progress and you move to Series A, it becomes more complex. And one of the kind of key advice that we tell our clients is keep everything as simple, straightforward, and organized as you possibly can. I know as you're running forward, fast with your startup, it's sometimes hard to do, but the simpler, the better, because we see so many, deals where either they get really delayed or they can even fall apart at the very end because of, certain things that are just kind of not market. So everything that you do, setting up your company on the corporate side, do it in a way that is the most market, kind of most understandable to investors, because obviously if you've got some amazing technology, amazing people, an investor is going to, overlook the sort of the paperwork issues and all of the balagan, all of the kind of those kind of things. But the simpler, the better. And that also means having, like don't get overly creative in the setup, with various complex anti-dilution structures or veto rights to the founders, like anything that can create some sort of complication later on, you can try to avoid. And kind of these days, obviously, with valuations having gone down, if you try to raise, you've got some, you're seeking a very, very high valuation, which is really not in line with kind of market expectations. That's just going to make it much harder for you to raise money. But if you can get those high valuations, more power to you. But keep in mind that the valuations now got to be realistic.
And I'll just add to that once you set up your corporation in the right way, in the right place, and yes, I am of the mind that if you want to do business in the US, start with setting it up here. I have seen too many companies have to do a flip, and it's a headache. But your story today matters more than ever. Whether you're AI or you're just using AI, or you have to be able to rise above the noise and show why you are truly unique. Put the big, exciting numbers front and center. Investors' language of love is numbers. And it's slightly different than with sales, because with sales, you're talking directly to the user and what they need. With the investor, you're talking about that other audience and why they need you and why they're willing to pay a lot of money and why other solutions don't cut it. So I also put the link to my investor deck template, so you all are welcome to use the sales and the investor. It just will guide you along the way of how to set all of the data, but there's a very particular flow to it that is much easier for investors or customers to track, follow, and make the right decision.
Yeah, and I guess from a storytelling aspect, in a pitch deck, right, you want to be very transparent about the numbers and projections. Obviously, everybody likes to show a hockey stick growth chart, but you got to be reasonable and show something that you actually think you can accomplish. And the more straightforward that your pitch deck is, the more people can buy into it and believe that you're the actual right team to do it. Any other tips there on how to tell?
Under promise, over deliver. Don't let those vanity metrics get in your way. Because the minute you kill your credibility, it's going to be very hard to get it back. It's better to be a bit more conservative. You don't need to look 10 years into the future or even 5 years. Look at the next 3 operating years and what you see, especially with predictable revenue, if you can show that and you can showcase that. Again, early enterprise sales, you may not have those numbers, but you have social proof and you have testimonials. And you have excitement around it. And those are the kind of things that are going to generate the excitement on behalf of the investor.
Yeah, and find investors that believe, kind of have that vision alignment as well too, right? So a lot of people have this misconception that you can just pitch any investor that does SaaS, right? If you're a SaaS product, but that's not the case. There's a lot of times there's a lot of very niche VCs with very niche interests. So if you find those venture capital groups or even angel investors that might have more of a mission or vision alignment with your company and your product and what you do, you're going to have a much better success pitching one of those people to be able to raise money than just pitching, the largest VC firm that you know of.
And one additional, oh, go ahead, Roy.
Yeah. First of all, I'm not a big expert in fundraising in the US because I haven't done that, and I'm not a big expert on fundraising in general. But we have many startups that using our platform to fundraise, and I saw a bit of a feedback. First of all, when you go and you fundraise, it's like going to sales. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, as Donna mentioned, you have to build the right story to grab their attention. But I think it's more important, first of all, to qualify your target prospect. Okay, I give an example. Let's say I'm a medical startup and I want to go to the US to fundraise a Series B, C, or etc. I can go and find database of all the big funds in the world, but many of them are not relevant for me, right? Because I need to first of all I need to do a market research, and then I have to focus on the funds that invest in medical. Let's say I find a fund that invests in cyber. And the storytelling kills them. Okay, they love it, but they can't invest because that's not their business. So first of all, do your qualification. Focus on the funds that's relevant. Then, in any other market, when you penetrate, you try to understand the sales cycle. Who's the decision maker? What's the right way to approach? When you do a big SaaS market outreach, that's one thing. On the funds, I think the best atmosphere today is to understand who's the key people that can connect you to the relevant decision maker in the relevant funds themselves, and not to do a big spread, magazine spray and pray outreach. Something a bit more intelligent, dedicated, more on a personal approach. But first of all, I think the most important thing is do your research and not waste time and effort and outreach on irrelevant funds, even though you really want to get an investment from Anderson or Horowitz, but they may not invest in your field, so skip it and focus on the funds that are relevant to your type, to your field. See where they invest in the past. That specific market research, with today's tools, can be even more faster and automatic, but it's crucial and will save you months and months of irrelevant sweat.
Yeah, and if you approach them the right way, just know that, like we talked about earlier, the referral aspect of American culture. A lot of times that they might not see that they're a good fit, or maybe it's not the right time, you're not at the right stage, whatever the objection is. A lot of times they might know another investor that has similar interests that they can refer you to and actually make that mutual connection with, which lines you up a lot better to be able to pitch this other potential investor and actually be able to land with that person. So don't be afraid to approach these relationships from a very personalized way. Try to even if they say no, it could open up doors to their network more widely. Great. So I guess with everybody, so any last thoughts on other tips that you would recommend based on your guys' relevant experience and field for Israeli companies coming into the U.S.? Any other considerations that they should be aware of before jumping over here?
I think to me the biggest. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I know you were asking us for tools and books and recommendations. I will shamelessly self-plug my book. It's called Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling for Startups. And it's the A to Z about storytelling, whoever you're talking to. And I do touch on cultural differences there, but it's like a cookbook. You get the recipes to do it yourself, and happy to have you all take that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Sorry, guys, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the biggest takeaway for me from this discussion is it's very easy for us to get kind of lost in our little, tunnel niche, but you kind of remind, this discussion to me was a reminder that you need to look at everything holistically. And it's not enough to, simply take care of the legalese. It's not simply enough to, have a good salesperson or hire, it all comes together, and probably the common thread is communications, the storytelling and the structure. So I think this was just a good example of that.
I think from the recruitment perspective, and I think this actually ties very much into lead gen and pitch deck and fundraising and everything else, the most important tool for us is actually your company's online presence. So this is something that we cannot do for you. This is something we can help you with and give you tips and send you to experts like Donna. But this is something that really you have to create based on your own DNA and really figuring out and having clarity on your vision, mission, really nailing your company branding, your employer branding, having that amazing website that differentiates from your competition, clear company narrative, and especially showcasing the people behind your company and their expertise so that people want to join you, they want to give you money, and they want to give you their business.
Excellent. Roy?
Yeah, I want to say one thing. First of all, you got to keep in mind as a startup, the most important thing in your company is to create revenue, okay? Investment is a means, okay? It's something you need to do in order to reach that profitability. Your target is to build a big, growing, amazing company. So don't take sales as something which is a side effect. That's the main thing you need to do. At the beginning, it's the R&D, but from that moment on, it's the sales and the marketing. Keep that in mind. You need business. When you generate business, when you generate value, when you generate profit, all the rest will come. Investors will chase you afterwards. Now, I do want to use this opportunity as we're on the final step to say one thing. We've passed a really, really significant year here, 11 months. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's really think because all the propaganda and all the stuff they see in the media, they maybe need to keep low or something. I just came back from the US, when 3 months ago. Okay, I had a big business trip over there. And the last thing I felt over there, and I've been to New York City and Washington, a big delegation and many meetings and events. The last thing I felt that I need to keep my head down. Now it's the time. Nobody speaks better than us. We can cooperate with US. That's also the purpose of this meeting, to meet and connect and to promote. So keep the full gas on, and that's what we need to do.
Excellent. Yeah, the U.S. is really relationship is stronger than ever. So, we definitely welcome and encourage a lot more Israeli companies to come do business with the U.S. And we encourage, U.S. companies to go over there and tap into the Israeli market as well. A lot of great opportunities here over the next year and beyond. And with that, I'd like to do just around the table and have you guys tell more about where they can learn about your company and your services, and so they could reach out to you guys and learn more about what you do. Going with Guy first.
Sure. Well, first of all, you can visit us in person. Our offices are in Times Square in New York. If you happen to be in Boston, you can visit our office in Boston, or of course in Tel Aviv, in Asrieri Sarona. Online, just Google Pearl Cohen or my name, and it'll come up, or on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to chat.
Excellent. Shira?
Yeah, you can feel free to learn a little bit more about us, our team. Check out our website at sapientsearchgroup.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Shira Goldetsky. I'll be happy to hear from you and schedule a Zoom and get to know each other further.
Roy?
Thank you, Andy. You can find Leadspotting on Google eventually and go leadspotting.com. We got a website. We got a couple of services. We got the main website. We got the home extension. We got also the bingo platform, which provides AR opportunities. So you can watch it all online. We can also connect with me on LinkedIn and book a meeting anytime you want. We have offices in Haifa. By the way, we might move soon. We also got R&D offices in Europe, and we're going to have a bigger US presence soon. But if you want to meet, as long as not in the Army, which happened quite a lot in the past year, I'll be happy to meet as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Donna?
DonnaGriffit.com, 2 F's, no H. There's a story there too. But I'm a one-woman show also, so I'm in Silicon Valley, but I'm really everywhere. So I'm on LinkedIn as well. Please do stay in touch and let me know if you have any questions.
Excellent. Well, once again, thanks everybody for joining today. A lot of great tips came out of this. So we definitely encourage even more the fostering of relationships between U.S. and Israeli companies. There's a golden opportunity for both sides to be able to connect and do business with each other. Again, take a lot of these tips to heart. A lot of great experience in the room here. So we'd like to thank all the panelists for coming on today. And once again, thanks for joining us for another Nacho Tuesday.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy. We appreciate it.